Hey there, folks, and welcome back into the Northern Football Podcast, episode 222 of NFP, and we'll break down Canada's 2-1 win over the United States in the third place game at the Concacaf Nations League. Of course, Mexico going on to win the Concacaf Nations League against Panama. Panama did get a penalty, though, for a very similar situation as Derek Cornelius wasn't given even a VAR review for in the semifinal. But Brendan and Alex joining me once again on Northern Football. Brendan back in Toronto, back from LA. But how you guys doing after what seemed like a bit of a chaotic weekend of Canadian soccer?
Yeah, to say the least, chaotic weekend. It's nice to be back home. I was very happy to get back to the family, but it was nice to be in the luxurious hotel lobby talking to you guys instead of my home office, which I feel like needs a lot of work.
So we need a shirt or something. I know it's been a while since we've had an NFP shirt, but like done, LA, op. Something like that, like a shirt for your time in LA. So it was pretty eventful. Unfortunately, it didn't end the way we wanted.
I'll let you Gen Z guys pick the slang because, I don't know what would fit there. Murked feels like one I would use. It was one of those weekends. I slept for the length of a match before getting to the airport for a 5 a.m. flight after Sunday. So I feel like I'm still coming off it. And I feel like I still haven't written everything that could be written.
You definitely got bodied. Let's say that.
Yeah.
Still that hungover feeling that we were talking about after the semifinal. But lots of good questions from the listeners, and we'll jump right into some of those questions. I imagine that we'll dive into a lot of what happened in that third place game because there were a lot of different things that we can break down, from a different striker and Taniolo Asai starting and getting his first national team goal, Alistair Johnston playing left back after Davies goes out, right back Nico Sigor for about 80 minutes. But we'll start off with Jim Wilkie. What were Jonathan David and Ishmael Kone arguing about immediately after the Canada-US match, Alex?
Yeah, I just wanted to include that question because it did make me laugh. And it, again, whoever was producing this game, hat tip, because between the Jesse Marsh getting followed by the tunnel WWE style, camera going right up into his face and him muttering I can't believe this is incredible. And then after the game, they spotted Kone and David. What I'll say about that argument looked nothing. I think it was, I called it the most average French discussion. Just a lot of hand gestures. He's probably like pourquoi t'as pas couru dans l'espace? And he's like, hey, passe-moi le ballon plutôt, imbécile, something like that. And then they all laugh about it in the locker room after. Just shout out to the director, because there's some really good drama that we sometimes I feel a bit aggrieved watching soccer matches because they'll pan too long on a guy, they'll miss a play. I thought a lot of this was spot on in terms of the drama component.
The press box at SoFi is an abnormal experience because, unlike BC Place, which is wide open, you have no glass. Stade Saputo is like that as well. Toronto, there is glass, but you still feel like you're in the stands. You still feel like you're able to absorb the atmosphere, even if it's slightly muted. It's only slightly. This press box at SoFi is soundproofed intentionally to minimize. Thank God it protected us all from the beer shower or whatever fluids were flowing as raining down on the lower bowls as Mexico scored late and then won late at night. But that in that Canada game, you do feel really removed from it. In addition to, they don't have the regular broadcast on the monitors. It's just the in-stadium monitors, and there's no additional sound. So in a lot of ways, I'm quite blind. In addition to, any of the clips that you guys are watching on social are geo-blocked for me. So I didn't actually see that until I saw a CBS Golasso clip. Chris Whittingham is doing his finishing monologue over it, and I noticed the exchange there, but that was not for a while. So it could be something as simple as, we're getting bronze medals, right? No, we're not getting bronze medals, man. Did you see the team meals? That could have been just, that's what I feel like they may have been arguing about. But I'm happy to hear from your eyes that it was a non-call, and that you got the same WWE shot walking through the tunnel as I saw. I think it was on the CBS broadcast. Did they actually give John Loban, the MediaComms manager for Canada there, the Walmart assist of the match?
Yep. they did indeed.
They
the delivery of the match. Yeah.
Shout out on TSN as well after the game, on one of their, completely as a side, they're shout out to Canada Soccer PR. I'm attaboy, John, getting some due love.
Yeah, honestly, big shout, man. I mean, this was the biggest operation that they've ever done. I'm assuming, but just based off of the volume that we've seen, Ben, you made the comment you always read every single piece of CanMNT content that comes out every window. That was physically impossible. If that was your full-time job, you would not have been able to do that in this window. So credit to Lobin, the players, and Jesse Marsch for, instilling in the squad that this is what's really important, because all the players were willing to speak, even the guys that don't say a lot. And sure, a lot of guys repeated things. This was the most accessible this team has ever been.
Yeah, and even by not being there, Alex and I still got interviews with these national team players quite easily. Canada Soccer PR, reached out to us to ask as well. So big shout out to them. Press box was very similar at MetLife this summer against Argentina. I felt so disconnected. It was almost 95,000 people or whatever in that stadium, and I feel like I don't remember any of that game because I was in the corner of the press box and didn't see much of it. All the clips were geo blocked. I couldn't pull up One Soccer. And so I saw like very few elements of that game, even despite being there, and probably having a similar experience to you in terms of, just the amount of sleep one gets covering those games, Alex.
Well, so it must be an NFL thing. I know Mercedes-Benz was open air, but I know Seattle's similar. Like you're very locked in. Must be something on the American side with football. Maybe because of the weather too. We have to remember LA. I don't know why it's maybe the opposite. They want the AC locked into that room.
No, I think it's exclusive to the sound, because if it was open, especially for Mexico, for example, it would be incredibly distracting. Like it would be impossible. You wouldn't be able to hear the person next to you if you're speaking to the person next to you. You certainly wouldn't be able to make any type of media call or control, some type of office. Also, maybe too in the opposite setting, if it was loud in the press box for some reason, they wouldn't want that spilling over into the bowl. That only would have mattered, say, for that first game, Panama against the USA, where there was 50 people in the building and 38 of them were working for CBS. That felt like watching a game on like during COVID. It was no sound. It was so artificial. And it was less like that for Canada USA. The crowd started to spill in a little bit. But I mean, it's an absolutely night and day comparison. For the night match with Mexico, got 69,000, I think, in the 77,000 seater, which is almost 20,000 more than we had for the headliner the night before, or 3 nights before on the Thursday. So it's wild to be there in person, but I'm happy to be home, boys.
And from Blair Donnelly, the TSN panel suggested Marsh might have shown his displeasure toward the non-called PKs as a gesture of Canada getting no respect and actually thinking a PK would have been called. Thoughts on that, Brendan? I know you wrote on his displeasure with the referees at his matchday -1 before the bronze medal game.
On his matchday -1 about the disrespect, yes, excuse me. In the press conference, he did highlight that and how it's something that's been weighing on them. I think we all agree that Mexico call, at the very least, you see that go to VAR in most leagues that have it. There definitely is some PTSD for Canada, because calls like that have historically gone against Canada, and this should be a moment now in this VAR era where that doesn't happen anymore. I don't think that either of the two shouts against the United States for Jonathan David there were anywhere close to what we saw on Thursday night. And that's, kind of what's frustrating maybe for Canadian fans who saw Jesse Marsch boil over there. But from talking to the players, from the reaction post-match from everyone, including Mauro Biello, everyone feels as though Jesse Marsch stood up for the team. And as he told Josh Cloak of The Athletic and Neil Davidson of Canadian Press early Monday morning, while I was in flight, he said he has absolutely no regrets and he would do it all over again. So don't know what was actually said to the referee. But obviously he was irate, and he and his coaching staff had crossed the touchline. So I knew that a booking was coming far before the referee had started to motion towards the Canada dugout. But yeah, one of those situations where probably didn't merit that actual reaction, but a real buildup of suppressed emotion spilled out there at a point in the game that really needed it, and it did galvanize the team. They found the goal and they held on and they played arguably their best half there in the second half to beat the USA. So not a real trophy, but a real good consolation feeling for them.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting piece of motivation from Jesse Marsch, and I think he nailed it. I think it's something where I'm not one to say go out and berate the referees, and I think the one unfortunate consequence of this is that the referee who put in a very good performance on this game gets caught in the crossfire, and I do feel bad for her because she was excellent. She got all the non-penalty calls pretty spot on, refereed a good game overall. But for Marsh, we have to remember this has been building, and I think that was interesting to hear his comments. It is more like this feeling of disrespect. And for me, I immediately think back to Copa, like the Alistair Johnston headbutt not called, a few other calls like that just would always seem to go on against this team. And Jesse Marsch just could like, hey, whatever, it wasn't our day, it wasn't our luck, whatever, we're Canadian, we'll just smile about it, move on. For him, I think this was more to show the players, like, look, I know I've been chill about it, but like, yeah, it is starting to piss me off. Like, I'm feeling Canadian. I'm feeling disrespected. I'm feeling like there's things against us politically, on the field, off the field, all these sorts of stuff. And I think it was just a smart move of like, let me show the guys how much I truly do care. And I think they know that. That hasn't been unclear. Like, Marsh has made it very clear. But I think this is just another sign of, yeah, when things are the way they are, like, I will sacrifice. I will be the one who looks like an idiot. I will be the one who yells and sacrifices, so you guys can just focus on your game. And I thought it was Marsh, textbook, taking a bullet for his team. Now, look, I think it's something where you don't pull that playbook out every time, and I don't think he will. He's been pretty calm, pretty chill. But I think it's sometimes as a coach, you have that element of surprise, right? Just to show it, like, yeah, when it comes down and it's a World Cup and maybe something like the Cornelius happens, he shows the guys that I will have your back.
And Jonathan David showed me up once again after I doubted him after the semifinal. He goes out and scores maybe the best goal that he scored for Canada in terms of aesthetically pleasing. And Thierry Henry seemed to like him playing a little bit more up, and he had a great interview with CBS after. Shout out to CBS for paying good attention to the Canadian team and talking to Jonathan David in a very smart way that we see a bit of in Canada, but it was definitely intriguing to see that panel dive into Canadian tactics and Jonathan David. But Thierry Henry and others say Jonathan David should play more as a traditional number 9 rather than falling back into that 10 or even false 9 role. The game against Mexico seemed to confirm that view. What do you think? That's the question from Mark East. Brendan.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that, with a player like that, who Jesse Marsch has raved about as being the most intelligent player he's ever coached, you don't want to pin and pigeonhole a player into any situation. You do want to allow them some freedom. You do want to allow your squad to adapt around them. The reality is you're not going to get it right. You're never going to bat 1,000, particularly in situations like that with a player that's so dynamic and elite. You could say the same thing about Alphonso Davies. To a lesser extent, you could even say that about Stefan Eustáquio. I think that Jonathan David was able to play to his best against a team that didn't know what the hell they were doing. That's also part of it. But you see the way that he linked up with Ali Ahmed on the goal specifically, and it just felt as though there was a bit more freedom. I think it was from most of the team, but it did seem like Jonathan David played a bit more relaxed. Not that he was particularly uptight, but as we've seen, and I hate to highlight and pick on Davies again, when things are difficult for this Canadian men's national team, it does seem like Davies tries a little too hard. And when you allow Jonathan David that freedom to occupy as a 10, I do think that he does the same thing and drops far deeper than he's able to be effective, particularly when Canada's struggling to get him any service. We said this about Harry Kane for Spurs for a long time before he left for Bayern Munich, and now that's not the case, where he doesn't have to drop back into that situation. And for Lille, a lot of the success that Jonathan David has had recently, it's kind of been the same with the squad that they have at the moment. He doesn't feel as pressured, and I do believe a lot of this is self-pressure, to occupy some of that space. So with Lair not being there, I think I expected, to be honest, him to play as deep as he did against Mexico consistently, but it wasn't effective. So whether that was collectively as a team that recognized that, or just Jonathan David himself, he was able to have much more of an impact on the game, because as we all said against Mexico, he was damn right invisible, and you're not going to win if that's the case. So he stepped up and they won.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this from different angles, so I'll try my best to collect and not make this too long-winded. But what I will say
should I put the kettle on, Alex?
You might want to put the kettle on.
Every time you've ever said, I'm going to be short with this, it's 7 minutes.
That's what I mean. I'll try my best, because anecdotally,
you still got Nico Seeger to get into here.
Exactly. Anecdotally, someone called me at halftime of this Canada-US game. Funny story. I may as well throw it in. And they're like, "Man, you're always talking about Jonathan David and how good he is, and like, I don't see it. He's been terrible in this first half against us. He's terrible against Mexico. Like, what is going on?" And I'm like, trust me, like, he's gonna do his thing. Whenever people doubt him, cough band, he always seems to find a way. So I actually had a really funny text exchange after with the friend when Jonathan David scored. He's like, "Sorry, man, I should have listened to you." And I'm like, all right. But to the point about Jonathan David, shout out Ben, by the way, who wrote a tactical analysis after the game. Peter will be proud to see how far our host has come. But Ben made a really good point, how Jonathan David, Brendan, actually had the exact same touches against Mexico as he did against the US, 38. The big difference is he had 11 in the box against US, and he had, I think, 3 it was against Mexico off the top of my head. I think for David, what he made a really good point on the CBS show. Listen to that full interview if you can. It's only 6 minutes. And he's like, look, like, I go where the ball is. Like, it's something where I naturally want to get in the game. I want to make touches. And I thought it was interesting to hear him say that, because we know that that's the case. But he says, it's like, no, sometimes I just need to get in the game. I need to drop deep. I need to get to the touches. And Jesse's fine with that. But for me, it's finding that balance. And against the Mexico, he lacked that balance. And part of that is personnel, like you mentioned, Brendan. Him and Laren was kind of occupying. David's like, nothing's going on. I'm going to find the space. Against the US, it did help. Another point that I really liked from your article, Ben, people should go read that on SI, is how Tani Oluwase was making these runs in behind and was stretching. It was opening space. And that kind of opened up room for David that maybe wasn't there, because Laren was a little more static, a little more flat-footed. So I think with David, it's going to be fascinating going forward, because I've talked a lot about having a runner in behind. And when Laren does that, Laren and David have worked. When Laren doesn't do that, Laren and David doesn't work. And it just, when you have guys like Promise David, Tani Oluwase, who make those runs in behind, that makes a big difference. And I think for David, he admitted it as well in that interview. He's like, for me, it's finding a balance. Against Mexico, I got it wrong. I held my hand up. We looked over tape. We've tried ways to fix it. And against the US, he showed why. And the reality is now he has 6 goals and 3 assists, 14 goals under Jesse Marsch. He's been involved in 9 of them and has scored 6 of them. Canada, you can check me on this. They haven't scored a game in which David hasn't been involved. Like, there hasn't been a game where they've scored and David hasn't been involved in one of the goals under Marsh. Like, there's clearly been a lot of work there. And I think the big question is, how do you get that in the big games? But I think that's less on David and that's more the team around him. And I think Marsh learned some very key lessons in that regard.
Talking about the key alteration there, Laren not being there, and you talked about what that affords them. The first person you mentioned was the one player that we didn't see at all, Promise David. Were you surprised that Tani got the start? Because I think most people were, for the simple fact that Jesse Marsh has seen Tani 10 times. He hasn't seen these other guys. But I think you're proven right, not just the fact that he scored the goal, but what you highlighted, that Tani allows Jonathan David, perhaps, and I do think it is circumstantial to the opposition, to play to max effectiveness, where those 38 touches can be far more efficient and impactful.
I would have liked to see Promise David at least play some minutes. Maybe the start for Tani Oluwase is the right way to go, just because those two have played together, albeit briefly, before. But to get Promise David to fly halfway across the world to LA to sit on the bench for 2 games, I don't know whether that's worth it. Like he is, and Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, cap tied because it's a competitive roster.
Well, he filed a switch, so it doesn't matter. Can unfile those.
Yeah, but it's just, I would have liked to see him for 5 minutes, right?
Look,
like just something, throwaway time.
I agree, but you're going to see him. I truly believe it. He's going to be a star of the Gold Cup. And I don't think we're going to see, guys, the B squad that we anticipated. I do think you're going to miss, you're going to miss 2 guys.
Davies and Eustachio, yeah.
So, but I think we all speculated you'd miss again top 6. They missed the top 8 guys in 2023. I think we're all expecting maybe 5. But from speaking to a lot of Americans and some former ex-pros, they think that that's insane, because the U.S. will have to send their A team, and you can't go into a tournament. The cliche that I used was, you can't take a knife to a gunfight, and Canada have at least this national team. They got a lot of guns, so if the Americans are bringing theirs, they should bring theirs as well. So I honestly think that Promise David has a real opportunity here to be a star at the Gold Cup. So I think it was really a part of just getting both those guys into the camp. They both seem to truly love the experience from all the media that they did. Promise David has this incredible personality, which I'm very excited to see more of as we get to know him more, and he continues to progress with the national team. And I really think that Gold Cup is going to be, this is the Gold Cup I'm most excited about ever.
I would tend to agree, but that American team, I don't know whether they're bringing their guns or their water guns, because it didn't seem like a very good American team this week. And I mean, you saw it firsthand, and everything that went on around the American team as well. It just seemed like they were all disconnected and not the team that you want to see under Mauricio Pochettino. 15 months away from the World Cup, especially a guy like Pulisic, who, like Davies, at a time with the Canadian men's national team, seems to not have a defined role with that team. But we'll jump into
trying too hard as well, trying to carry it. But like they're a mess. That was the argument from these multiple ex players. Like they cannot afford to send a B team because they're so damn broken. They need the experience, and they also need to prove that they can do something. There's a real possibility here that Mauricio Pochettino is not managing in 26. That is effing crazy.
$6 million a year. Like, it is very possible. And it doesn't seem like things have really gone to plan at all for him.
They've not gotten better. It's as simple as that. They have not gotten better under him.
Yeah, they also misidentified what their problem was, and I think we're starting to see that. Like, the problem isn't talent, and that's they kind of hired for it, right? Like, the reason you pick a Pochettino versus Marsh is you maybe feel that the team needs a bit more tactical, nuance and etc. Reality is, like, you see that this Canadian team, they've got so much more dog than the US team does. And that was an interesting point of discussion on the game Sunday on the CBS panel. And it's true, especially when you have guys like Clint Dempsey sitting there talking about it. Who's the US's Clint Dempsey? It's not Pulisic. It's like, is it Gio Reyna? No, he's kind of, he saw he came on and kicked Kone or whoever it was he kicked and got a yellow for it at the end. Also, that's something with the US. It's they just haven't been able to coach some dog, and I'm curious to see how they find that, if they find that, because Pochettino already seems lost at answers. Like, the heck are these guys? They're just lifeless bodies out there, just kind of playing.
Well, Matt Turner walked through the mix zone, and I'll be honest, what crossed my mind was, "Hey man, Canada got that dog in him, or what?" I didn't say anything to him. He just nobody spoke to him. He just walked all the way through to the bus.
Well, Diego Luna seemed to have some dog in him. Great player. And his RSL team on the weekend, of course, MLS playing through international break, you can have your thoughts on that, came out with puppies to start their match instead of child mascots, which was kind of cool. So Diego Luna, probably lucky not to have to hold the dog because it might have been bigger than him. But what a player.
Maybe they did it in honor of him just because he's such a dog. They're like, let's get puppies because he's not here.
That's it. But I'm pretty sure that they didn't roll out with pit bulls. I don't know what the breed specific legislation is in the state of Utah. But Diego Luna is an absolute pit bull and was the best American on the pitch. And no disrespect to him, that is a problem going into 2026 because at best he's probably number 13 on that roster. You cannot have that person undeniably being your best performer.
One of the big stories from the match as well, the Canadian fullback situation. Alphonso Davies goes down in the 12th minute. Brendan, I know you said that there was a sort of a hush that fell over the press box, at least within the Canadian reporters. And then we see Nico Seeger get almost 80 minutes in this one. And then we also saw Alistair Johnston, who had never played left back in his life, switch over to that side and play that side and did a tremendous job, especially on crosses. His left foot looked perfectly fine to me. But what do you think on
I didn't know that. He said he'd never ever played left in his life. I didn't realize
at any level or whatever.
At any level in his career.
Wow. I mean, I could have sworn I feel like for some reason I can picture him on the left side of like a back three with Herdman, but I guess not. Well, that's crazy. No, I thought he did very well, and I think that was tactically. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that was just to handle Tim Weah and how dynamic and versatile Weah has become, and how he was one of the few players that looked like he had that, well, to use your term, dog in him, but looked like he had that fight and pride that American fans and media have been clamoring for and didn't see from 2 games. He brought it.
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, the Tim Weah point's a good one because the thing is with Weah playing on the left because of his eye dominance, such a funny thing that is. He's going to cut inside more because he is very right-footed. So it is a good bet too, because you do worry about pace in a Weah versus Seeger matchup. Like Seeger can move pretty well. He doesn't look like it, but for a big guy, he doesn't look as gangly and awkward as he should. But it was a good call because, most of the time Weah cut in. Look, Seeger maybe looking back on the first goal. Hard to blame it on him just because there's just so much that went wrong in a quick succession. the only thing you could say of Seager, you get tighter to your guy. That's normal, but Weah is also a quick guy. But no, Seager held his own very well. And I think the big thing that was clear was what he added in possession, like the ability of having a midfielder back there, someone who can just be calm on the ball, filter it forward to the Ahmeds and Buchanans in front of him, to kind of tuck into the midfield and support in that way, because then Johnson would tuck into the back three, but also get forward. Seager looked fantastic. I think genuinely was what I've come to expect from him. Like, he's good on the ball, he's good off the ball. He showed both of those things very well. But this is why I wanted to see a lot more from him. And now I think going forward, he could open up some very interesting questions for Jesse Marsch, because I was kind of playing around it. Because if you throw him in at right back, you can have that option to invert him in midfield. Of course, you can throw him in midfield. Maybe that frees up a guy like Kone to play a little higher up the pitch. Maybe that frees up Jonathan David to play higher up the pitch. Like, Seager is extremely versatile, and I think that's something that has to be an asset. And that was the first time we've really seen him. I find it wild. That was only his third cap, and that was his first run of more than 20 minutes. Because he's been there for a while now, but this was a long time coming. And I think if you're Jesse Marsch watching back the tape on this, you have to be thinking like, okay, there's a player I have to be finding a way to use going forward.
Been there for a while. We were together in Vancouver last summer when he just transferred for the first time. When he got called in for the first time. Man, I know it feels like a lot because we talk to each other every day, but 9 months, 10 months is not a long time, Alex.
Not national team, no, but it feels like it. It's like, man, he's been there for like a whole season. I guess in reality, you're right. It's been this is his fourth camp, which again blows my mind because it doesn't feel like it.
He doesn't look like a rook, though. That's the point, right? I had him in the mix-up for about 6 minutes. I'm going to post a bit on what he thinks his best position is. He was exceptionally articulate. He, in every way, is like a Croatian version of Alistair Johnston, which I thought was really nice and very refreshing. It was a very good conversation. So I will post that on Canadian Soccer Daily as soon as I get to it.
Good to know he was taking classes at York U and not just like, making up the numbers in some dorky class just to get the GPA up.
Exactly. Wasn't taking agricultural science. Yeah.
Go to school, kids, because Alistair Johnson went to college, and you see how well-spoken he is, and you see Nico Seager, even though I don't think he finished his degree at York, or maybe he's still working on it in some way. I would doubt that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Seager family. I know you do listen to this, but definitely go to school and stick in school. But takeaways, just generally, a lot of questions on that from these two Canada games heading into the Gold Cup this summer, and then the next time that this full competitive team will be together, full strength squad in a competitive game, will be the World Cup, which is weird to think, but we're 15 months out from the World Cup. I posted just to X and Blue Sky yesterday a little mock roster of how I see the next year playing out. Alex shaking his head on that, but Brendan, how do you see this next year playing out? What are your biggest takeaways coming away from this?
Well, hold on. You said that the last time we will see this A squad is next June
in a competitive game.
In a competitive game. Yes. I think that's okay. The fact that it's not the next time, that's not the only time that we will see them together. I genuinely think that that's okay. The test that they're getting, the friendly opposition that they've been able to book, it's going to prepare Canada for the biggest moment, but also I think make them their best when it matters the most. I really have a lot of confidence in this team, the way they've organized things, the way the players showed in response to the Mexico match. I think we all said, look, we're disappointed because we had higher expectations for Mexico, but when you analyze it, they weren't horrendous. Mexico played well, and you're going to get outplayed. I think that they're in a really strong position to impress a lot of people, man. And I really think that it's kind of a dream scenario because this is a team that I think will really capture the country in ways that the World Cup team wasn't ready to do so in 2022.
I think that's well put. I think for me, what I would add is this reaffirms a lot of what we knew about this Canadian team. Like, I think this Canadian team, when they're in the right game state, they're fun to watch, direct, quick, play with passion. That's good. We know that. We've seen that in, friendlies in the fall. We saw that against Suriname. We saw that at Copa America. That's good. At the same time, I think what was also reaffirmed is depth, needs to continue to grow. It's in a good spot, but there's a difference between having depth and trusting depth. And I think, maybe that shows up in the first game where, maybe in hindsight, you could have seen a Seager in that one, or you could have seen more of you could have seen a Schwanier start versus an Osorio start, etc. That sort of thing will come over time as you get to know these guys more and more and see where they fit and see how guys progress. It also reaffirmed, and this is something, again, that I'm very curious to see in the friendlies. I am like, what's Jesse Marsch's plan B? Because his plan A is very good. It works. But this is football. What happens when Mexico comes and punches you in the face and sits back and says, we're going to do everything that you don't like, beat us? What's the plan B? Because as much as you don't want to plan for it, that's a chance at the World Cup. There's some world-class players. You're playing a team and world-class player does a world-class thing and then they sit back. What's the plan? I think Jesse Marsch is going to look at that over the next few months. And yeah, from there, I want to see this pool continue to grow and grow and grow and actually see these guys in meaningful minutes. Like, that's why I'm genuinely excited about the Gold Cup, of like, this is the time to see extended roles of what a Nico Seeger looks like, what a Promise David looks like, if we to use him, Daniel Jebison, some of these other guys. Heck, we got some questions, which is true, like Liam Miller. Don't forget about him when he's back and fit. Where does he helps? The winger situation was a bit thin in this camp. What's the center back options behind a Bombito, Cornelius? What's going on in goal? Just continue to reaffirm that. So definitely for Marsh, I think he can look at this team and know he has a good base. It's just, how do you improve if your goal is to be as best as you can for 2026?
And we'll find out the Gold Cup teams pretty soon as well. Those qualifiers continuing to go on. And one of the teams that is potentially not making it is Jamaica. They're going to be in tight going into their second leg against St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But Will Smith, your thoughts on his performance, Brendan, seeing that live in the stadium?
Buddy, I didn't even hear it. I was doing press conferences. I was doing mix zone. I didn't even hear it. The Canadian contingent got back to our seats in the press box. It is a maze for anyone that's been in an NFL stadium before. There's certain elevators. There's a lot of waiting, a lot of walking around a giant ground. Didn't even hear it. I will say this though, Mauricio Pochettino was very distracted by the monitor. This would have been pre-Will Smith based on my timeline. And I think that was because he was like living a Southwest Airlines commercial where he just wanted to get away and he couldn't. But I was astonished by how many times he kind of stumbled to find his words, because he was watching the Mexican fans in the party and the infotainment team that some friends of mine, shout out to Nigel Caliber and Footy Scoops in the Six, that were distracting Mauricio Pochettino after one of the worst press conferences that he's had to give in his short tenure.
He's probably thinking, like, should I have returned that call on that Spurs guy who called me? He's thinking, who's going to sack their coach in the Premier League that I should go back to? Is $6 million? Can I get $6 million in Premier League? It's a little, probably a little water bowl.
Guys, not to drag this out, but when I say it's ridiculous, I think there's a reality that Mauricio Pochettino is not actually coaching when the World Cup comes next summer. I think if a phone call does come from Tottenham this summer, it's going to be very difficult for him to say no, because I do not think that he is living the situation and the scenario on and off the pitch that he thought he was signing up for.
How good does Greg Berhalter's Chicago look right now? Could he be a candidate?
Or BJ Callahan's Nashville? Or Mikey Varis's San Diego? They lost for the first time this weekend. But
my feelings of BJ Callahan. That guy is fantastic.
But what he coached like 6 games, won 2 trophies, and pieced off.
I just think the fact that he looks like the high school football coach that you would have loved to have played for. That's a big part of it for me.
That's all we've got on this episode of Northern Football, episode 222. For Brendan and Alex, I've been Ben. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure to catch us on the 90th Minute on YouTube. You can catch our podcast on any podcast provider that you're on as well. And we're on social at Northern Football on Instagram, Blue Sky, and X or Twitter as well. Thanks so much for tuning in. An exciting week of Canadian soccer, 3rd place at the Nations League, and a lot of hope going into the next 15 months. And we'll be back next time.